Hello and welcome back to Recitals in Depth, your trusted source of monthly current affairs. Taking up the discussion for the month of December, the topics on science and technology that made headlines were across the themes like working of hyperloops, inventions of diamond batteries, what are extrachromosomal DNAs, and its application in cancer treatment. So taking forward the detailed discussions on such interesting topics, let's start the discussion. So hello everyone, let's look into the index of December 2024. So here are the following topics which we are going to very thoroughly bring forward for you, so much so that you will not forget it. Even if it comes in the examination, you might even not want to revise it again. We will try to teach you in that manner. The methodology of teaching that we have adopted in this recital is that we'll be learning everything through an FAQ mode or a questionnaire mode. So I will bring forward the important question related to all the topics and we will try to answer all of them together. Once you have answered the what, when, how, etc. of all the topics individually, you will come at a very comfortable position of remembering, recalling and producing this information and knowledge in your examination. So let's get started. Now the first topic is about nephromycin. As the name suggests, anything which has got a sin or a mycin in the end definitely corresponds to the antibiotic class of drugs. Now, this nephromycin has made a lot of talks, especially in the Indian news. The reason for this, and not just Indian, international news as well, the reason for this is it has overcame the stagnation in the antibiotic market that was there since the last 3 decades. Since the last 3 decades, we did not really come across any new effective antibiotic, especially one that could overcome the disease prevalent with the overuse and the abuse of antibiotic, that is the AMR, antimicrobial resistance. So, to overcome the antimicrobial resistance, a groundbreaking antibiotic has been produced indigenously by India, and therefore, it is the first time ever that India has created an indigenous antibiotic for a particular line of disease that we will be discussing soon. But broadly, it is about pneumonia. So this is going to cure pneumonia, and particularly which kind of pneumonia? Not the normal one, but one that is drug resistance. So the drug resistance pneumonia is the targeted disease over here. Now, let's try to bring forward the key questions which you should be answering. First is, what is nephromycin? So nephromycin is an antibiotic. It is an antibiotic which is indigenously produced by India. And recently it was in news because it was officially launched by the Union Health Minister. Next, what is the trade name of antibiotic? So these chemical names are rather very confusing to use, right? So therefore, you have got azithromycin. It is named as Zithromax in many medical centers. Why? Because that is a trade name. You have got amoxicillin, something that somebody who's suffering from cold, acne, etc. would be using. So this has a trade name of amoxil, correct? So similarly, to make it sound more easier and user-consumer friendly, what we call it as is Micnaf. So Micnaf is its trade name. Next question, who exactly has developed this? Of course, it is indigenously produced by India, but is it any AIIMS particularly or any other biological development council? So the council which is responsible for producing this groundbreaking drug is BIRAC. And what does BIRAC stands for? So this is Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council. Because herein we get the research assistance for the biotechnology industries. Therefore, in this particular case, it got a research assistance from government of up to 500 crore to develop this drug, which took, by the way, 14 years to be developed. So can you imagine how much amount of time and resources goes into developing one drug? And therefore, when we say that antimicrobial resistance is a growing menace of the society, of the environment, then that is definitely true, because in order to counter this with the help of another newly branded, newly made and researched antibiotic, it would again take a lot of time, at least minimum of 10 years. But this, of course, groundbreaking achievement has been done by India. But this is for which disease? This is for pneumonia disease, but not your average pneumonial disease. This is for the community acquired bacterial pneumonia. So the targeted disease is CABP. Now, what is community acquired bacterial pneumonia? See what happens. Because pneumonia is a contagious disease, which means it is a communicable disease. So, a person affected from pneumonia could very easily impact 7 others around him or her. Therefore, if you live in a community where a lot of people are suffering from pneumonia, it is highly likely that a lot of people, in fact, the studies have found that more than 60% of the people living in that particular community would be impacted by one or the other kind of hidden pneumonia, which could start showing its effects sooner or later. So this is known as community acquired bacterial pneumonia, and this particular disease is responsible for up to 12% of the overall deaths in our country, and it leads to more than 55% of the total hospitalization in the country. And therefore, if this is rendered ineffective because the current existing antibiotics were not good enough, they were not effective enough on the patient, because why? The patient has developed antimicrobial resistance against this disease. That is when this problem gets more concerning. This problem gets more aggravated. But first of all, let's understand this disease a little bit more deeper. So here we have got pneumonia. So what is pneumonia and which kind of disease it is? First of all, as you all know, it is a contagious disease, and also it is a bacterial disease. So which bacteria is responsible? First of all, it is not just one bacteria which is causing pneumonia, but a spectrum of bacteria. But the most lethal ones are 2 bacteria. One is the Streptococcus pneumoniae, and the second one is Mycoplasma pneumoniae. So you have these 2 specific bacteria which are most deadly, which very easily create the antimicrobial resistance as well. So the next question is, which body part is impacted by this bacteria or this bacterial infection? It is the lungs, and in particular the air sacs, the micro air sacs of the body, of the lungs, which are responsible for inhaling, for capturing the your oxygen and giving away the carbon dioxide, and therefore assisting us in respiration process, and also ensuring that the oxygen and carbon dioxide is getting supplied rightly to the blood vessels, right? So this is the alveoli. So alveoli are impacted. As you can see that there are tiny sacs in the lungs. Now these are like balloons. When they get the oxygenated blood or the oxygenated air, they inflate themselves, and similarly upon exhaling they deflate themselves. Now the problem is, when they are impacted by the bacteria, this is the infected alveoli. Now when they are infected by the bacteria, naturally their ability, their plasticity to inflate as much as, expand as much as they can, gets compromised. Therefore you will find difficulty in breathing. Not just that, now because your body is not able to take as much of oxygen, there might also be fever, congestion, in worst cases death. And therefore this is a very lethal disease. Now in a very crude language, in very crude terminology, people often say that a person has got infected in the lung because water has entered into the lung. So how can water enter into the lung? It is not the water, but the water and the pus which has got accumulated inside the alveoli because of pneumonia, because of this bacteria. Right? Now you understand why it is called pneumonia and what is community acquired bacterial pneumonia. Now coming to the next question. Now since this is not a new disease, it is also likely that we must be having a lot of medicines. but still they are rendered ineffective. So what are the new features of this particular medicine which is overcoming the deficiencies of the previous ones? Let's have a look. Talking about the feature, it has got the quality of dual pathogen targeting, because I have already told you, most of the medicines, while only would be targeting one microbe, one bacteria, I have shown you names of 2, but there are more than 10 bacteria which could be impacting the lungs and cause pneumonia. So while most of the medicines only target one pathogen at a time and therefore render our lungs susceptible to the other bacteria, this one targets the 2 most deadly bacteria, which is the mycoplasma bacteria and second one was streptococcus bacteria, both of which that are very lethal for the lungs. So it targets 2 deadly pathogens, and now you know the name as well. Now, it has minimal side effects. See what happens when you consume antibiotic. Antibiotic is something which we as Indians consume like anything. In fact, we go to the doctors ourselves, and without even going to the doctor, we go to the prescriptionist or pharmacist and take the antibiotic. Without any prescription as well, and therefore we also incur a lot of side effects. For example, a pukish feeling could come, then sometimes fever would come upon having antibiotic, a lot of acid influx would come. So this is happening because it has got a lot of side effects, especially impacting the gastrointestinal tract, because our intestine is full of microbiomes. It has got lakhs and millions of bacteria. Now, when you eat an antibiotic, what will happen? It will start killing these digestive bacteria, these digestive microbes, and therefore it will lead to indigestion. In most cases, it will lead to gastrointestinal problems. But this particular medicine showcases good efficiency and showcases minimal side effects which are related to gastrointestinal tract. And therefore, it is also advised that whenever you take antibiotic, you should always take some kind of antacid, a kind of suppressant which helps with acidity as well. Generally, often prescribed by the doctors, and also you should be supplementing it with multivitamins, because killing of these bacteria, the ability of the body to absorb essential vitamins, for example, vitamin B, vitamin C, etc., that is also compromised. So in order to maintain your vitamin concentration in the body, it is required that you take additional doses of multivitamin as well. Now, coming back to the features, it also showcases high efficacy. How much it is tested? It is tested not just in India, but having been tested across many countries of USA, UK, and of course in the country of India, we have analyzed that the efficacy has to be found 10 times more than the effective or the existing antibiotics, and that too within just 3 dosages. Right? So these are about the features. Now moving forward, let's talk about the main problem over here, which is the antimicrobial resistance, and how is it impacting us and what initiatives the Indian government has taken for the same. Let's have a look. So antimicrobial resistance, which is also known as drug resistance, is when a spectrum of microbes, for example, virus, bacteria, fungi, etc., they become ineffective towards any drug treatment like antibiotics, antiviral, anti-malarial medicines, etc. That is when the disease becomes more overpowering, the disease becomes difficult to be treated, and therefore this condition is known as the antimicrobial resistance, or basically the drug resistance of any disease. Okay, now as you can see, not worrying about drug resistance because you never take drugs. But then, this is not the definition of antimicrobial resistance or drug resistance. What it means is, it is not you who has become resistant to the drug, it is the microbe, it is the microbes who have gone drug resistant. So we are trying to kill those bad microbes, right? How are we trying to kill? With the help of antibiotics. Now, what if these antibiotics or the microbes have become less resistant or less effective towards these antibiotics? So in that case, the disease becomes very difficult to be targeted and controlled. Therefore, it is the microbes who have gone drug resistance, not you. But eventually, overall, you have also become drug resistant against any particular disease if you overconsume these antibiotics. Now, What is AMR? We have understood. What are the examples of AMRs? So do you know two very deadly diseases that exist in society right now? One is tuberculosis, again caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and the second one is the HIV, caused by HIV virus. HIV AIDS, right? So for the treatment of TB, we have got two very important drug lines. Okay, one is isoniazid and the second one is rifampicin. Rifampicin. Now you can use these examples in your mains as well. These two drugs are effectively used for curing TB, which is very deadly disease. In fact, India has got the highest TB burden across the world. And then we have HIV, through which we give, to cure this, we give antiretroviral therapy, which also includes certain antiretroviral drugs to be delivered. Now, what happens in the case of antimicrobial resistance is because the targeted bacteria, in this case it is virus, in this case it is bacteria, the target pathogen, the target microbe has become so resistant to these medicines that they have stopped responding against them, which means you take the pill, the microbes will still not kill itself. The reason for this is because they have evolved, they have mutated to live in harmony with these medicines, and that is why it renders some of the very best medicines ineffective to cure some of the deadliest disease. This is known as antimicrobial resistance. How many types of antimicrobial resistance could possibly occur? To understand that, the first thing you need to understand who exactly is becoming drug resistant. It is the pathogen. Okay, now whether that pathogen is drug resistant by its very own nature or whether it is learning to become drug resistant, that itself creates two classification of AMR. So one AMR is the acquired AMR and the second one is inherent AMR. So when a pathogen has got inherent characteristics, inherent genetic material of being drug resistant, then that is inherent type of AMR. Otherwise, if it has mutated or learned to become drug resistant, then in that case, this is an acquired AMR. Okay. Now, there is another type of classification. This was one type of classification. There is another type of classification as well, depending on the types of the drugs, which have been rendered ineffective. So let's say we are targeting one disease. To give you an example, let's target the disease of tuberculosis. We know that there are two effective drugs. Let's say the body has gone resistant to only one drug. Then in that case, this is known as single drug resistant AMR. So this is single drug resistance. Okay. If it has gone resistant to more than two drug line therapy, then then this is known as multi-drug resistance. So in the worst of all scenario, what will happen, that this particular disease has gone resistant to, or this pathogen has got resistant to almost all the available line of drugs, especially the three most prevalent and available line of drugs, and in that case, this is known as extensive drug resistant disease. So we have understood what are the two classifications and the 5 different types of TB. Okay, 5 different types of AMR. Next and the most important thing, what is the AMR and how is the AMR problem in India? Well, it is a global problem, but specifically for India. When I say globally, WHO, your premier health agency, has already said that this is one of the top 10 deadliest health problems across the world. So, WHO has highlighted that this is very deadly. I'm talking about AMR, and particularly in India, we are one of the largest consumers of antibiotics. There are various reasons as to why the AMR is getting developed in Indians. First reason is the rise in communicable diseases. As the number of diseases are growing, the need for antibiotic will also grow. So the consumer population will also grow. And second is the lack of awareness among the customers or the consumers that if they overdose on antibiotic, or if they abuse the use of antibiotic, or if they have, let's say, been said that you should be taking a 5-day prescription, have only taken a 2-day prescription, on the third day the body will start developing antimicrobial resistance, because that is the survival tendency of the pathogen. They also want to survive, right? So that it is a fight. The fight can also only be won by respecting the antibiotics and only taking the dosages prescribed by the doctor under surveillance. Now in the case of India, and mostly the AMR problem is growing first because of the rising communicable diseases. Second is because people are not aware as to what the abuse of antibiotics, so awareness against the abuse of antibiotics consumption, that is also there, awareness gaps are there. Then third is the abuse of antibiotics, where? In treating the cattle related diseases, in treating the animal diseases. Now what happens is, when you inject a lot of antibiotic into the cattle or the dairy product, or let's say the fish and meat, when they will be consumed by the humans, will be transferring those drug resistant microbes into our system. So that is how they enter a very complex food chain. So that is happening because of the growing abuse of antibiotic in the cattle treatment, in the veterinary treatment as well. Okay, so these are some of the reasons as to why AMR is growing in India. But of course, government has taken certain proactive steps, one being the introduction of nephithromycin in the Indian market. And what are the other measures? Let's see if any policy measures have been taken so far. So first is an action plan. One we require is an action plan as to how to deal with AMR, and this we have started from 2017 to 2021. It has now got extended as well. And under this action plan only, the contribution of government for this BIRAC research of nephithromycin has grown. So initially that the amount that we have committed was only 100 crore, then it got extended up to 500 crore because of this national action plan. This also intends to increase the awareness among the people, and therefore there was a policy in 2011, national policy for the containment of AMR. This mostly targeted around building the awareness of the people, and the health professionals to first of all be responsible in prescribing the antibiotics, and second, awareness for the consumers or the patient to take the antibiotic judiciously. That has been done. So these awareness programs, action plans are going on in India. Now next was the requirement of a surveillance network. Because how would you know if the antibiotics are getting abused or not? The only method is to have an independent surveillance network, and that was created in India as well. So we have got an AMR surveillance network, which is an independently working body. And of course, how to ensure that people would be knowing they are consuming an antibiotic? That is when the drug policy comes into fore by creating the red line campaign. So according to the drug policy, the Schedule H drugs, which have to be mandatorily used judiciously because they contain antibiotics in them, they are painted with a red line. So whenever you see any packet of medicine and you see a red line in it, make sure that you are following the proper prescription advised by the doctor and not by the pharmacist or by yourself. And next is, government has been supporting researchers as well, and therefore which has led research especially for the bodies like BIRAC by giving them funds, giving them time, support, researchers, etc. And therefore we have got to have the first ever indigenously developed medicine or antibiotic to treat the CABP problem across the world, right? So this is all about nephithromycin. Now let's move to the next topic, a very interesting one. Now, before moving to the next topic, let's test our knowledge. It was asked in prelims 2019, which of the following are the reasons for occurrence of multi-drug resistance, the MDR, one type of drug resistance we have read in the microbial pathogens in India. One is the genetic predisposition of people. No. Taking incorrect dosages of antibiotic to cure disease. Yes. Using antibiotic in livestock farming? Is the answer correct or not? You tell me in the comment section. Multiple chronic diseases in some people? Again, you tell me the answer, whether the C is correct or not, and whether the fourth one, the third is correct or not, and whether the fourth is correct or not. And then let me know the answer, the final answer of this question as well. Okay, now let's move to the next topic. The next topic is about extra chromosomal DNAs. When we talk about the cancer treatment, the researchers these days have been working ruthlessly upon the RNA therapies and the DNA therapies, because understanding the genome is how we will unlock the key to understanding how cancer develops in one particular line of generation, because we know that this is an inherited disease. Cancer, of course, is not communicable, but it is one of the deadliest diseases across the world, with about the death rate of 17% across the world because of cancer only. Now, to treat cancer and to understand cancer, again we have to answer certain key questions which I will be sharing with you. But before that, please understand what is a DNA, what are the different types of DNAs, all of this that we are going to discuss in this slide. So first of all, what is a DNA? DNA essentially stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. We all know that in each cell of our body, be it eukaryote or prokaryote, we have got certain strands which are entangled together, and these are the reasons why we inherit the properties of our ancestors, of our generations, because they contain the very genetic code. They tell our body how to grow, which disease to acquire, how to fight any disease. Every code that will be operating or that will be aiding the function of our lives, that will be controlled by that particular genetic code. That is encapsulated in DNA. Where is DNA exactly found? They are primarily found in the nucleus. In the nucleus, and that too in the genomes. So within the genomes, we have got certain entangled segments which are known as DNAs. Deoxyribonucleic acid. They contain all the genetic information, but this is not the only place, by the way, in which DNAs are stored. Let's get back to the structure of DNA first. So DNA contains of three things. One is a sugar group, a phosphate group, and the nitrogen bases. It is the different nitrogen bases and their sequencing which actually creates a differentiation between DNA structure and the RNA structure. So the entire double helix is created by a backbone. This backbone, as you can see, of double helix is created by sugar and phosphate. So they are the supporting structure. But how this arrangement will be made is going to be different. And because of this arrangement, see how in coding, in computers, we have got 0 and 1 as the basic codes. These are the bases. Now how you arrange them, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0 or 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, this will give us different information. And so the sequence in which these bases, these 4 bases have been connected, this determines the genetic information which is unique for everybody. So the DNA is also unique for every organism. So these 4 bases are adenine, thymine, cytosine and guanine. These sequencing are generally of AT and CG pair. Now having understood this, now let's move to the type of DNAs. How many type of DNAs could there potentially be? That depends upon one thing, which is the location, the different type of locations in body where possibly the DNA could be found. But by the way, you already know that DNAs are present in the chromosomes which contains the genome, the entire genetic address of our body, and the very basic unit of it is known as DNA. Now when you know that, you also understand that DNA might also be present outside these chromosomes, which means outside the nucleus. So outside the nucleus, there are either circular DNAs or there are linear DNAs. And some of the DNAs are also found in another organelle. Can you name that? Which organelle has got this DNA? This DNA is also present in mitochondria. And this is about the animal cell, right? In the plant cell, Not only are the DNAs present outside the chromosomes in both circular and linear form, but they are also present in the chloroplast. They are also present in chloroplasts. So when we talk about the type of DNA, we have got broadly two types of DNAs. One are the chromosomal DNAs. One are the chromosomal DNAs, and the second are all the other DNAs which are found outside the chromosome, be it a plastid, which is not, by the way, present in human cell, in animal cell. The other would be the mitochondrial cell, or these circular DNAs, or these linear DNAs. Every class of DNA which is present outside the chromosomes are known as extrachromosomal DNAs. So now, because this is our main theme, we have understood the two different type of DNAs and what are extrachromosomal DNAs. Now, to understand what exactly is this extrachromosomal DNA and how is it very effective in understanding the cancer treatments and how cancer develops across bodies, we will be learning about these two structures. So as we have said, DNAs could be classified into two types based on location, chromosomal and extrachromosomal DNA. Let's talk about the chromosomal DNA. A DNA itself would be containing something which is an enhancer, the insulators, regulatory sequences, and this is so with the case of extrachromosomal DNA as well, except that you will not be finding insulators here. Second, the regulatory sequences are also not very favored. Why? Because they whatever information they capture, because they don't have the insulator, it is very difficult to take this information outside of the cell. So let's say they have stored the information of oncogenes. Every cell has got an oncogene. Oncology stands for the study of cancer. Onco stands for cancer. So every DNA has got an oncogene. It could be producing oncogene, but our body somehow has the ability of fighting these oncogenes very rapidly, and therefore every moment our body is killing millions of cancer cells, and therefore you should be grateful for human body, you should be grateful for your health. Now, talking about the oncogene in a chromosomal DNA, let's say I have had any cancer therapy here in this cell, or we made any gene editing here, then in that case, this oncogene will get very easily suppressed. So the number of oncogenes that are getting produced will get suppressed. But in this particular case, once it acquires an oncogene, then everything will amplify the number of oncogenes. So whatever information, right now the information is to produce cancer because oncogene has been trapped, right? Whatever information inside is there, every cell, every subconstituent will try to amplify that. In this case, if it gets the code or if it inherits the code of an oncogene, a gene developing cancer, then it will amplify the number of cells. So till now what was happening now? Let's say we have got the CRISPR-Cas9 technology, a very forward-looking technology which is able to provide genetic editing of the cancer-causing cells. Now in that case, we are editing this chromosomal DNA. We are not targeting the extrachromosomal DNA. But what will we do by targeting chromosomal DNA? Chromosomal DNA are very easy to be edited, first of all, and second, they are very easy to be identified as well because they are particularly placed inside the chromosome. And second, once edited, yes, they will control the number of oncogene multiplication. But if I have not identified extrachromosomal DNA, which are the main culprits, they will create cancer cells twice and thrice the rate of the chromosomal DNA. So once scientists have understood that the main culprit and the main area which needs to be edited by CRISPR technologies and likewise technologies should be the extrachromosomal DNA. So in researches, what we are trying to understand, we are trying to understand their location. We are trying to detect them with the help of biomarkers. Because it has been found that in almost all the cancer patients, one thing was common, was about 30 to 40% of ecDNA marker. So this was common in almost all the cancer patients. And once you know that this is common in all the cancer patients, it becomes a very important biomarker. So anybody who is impacted or who is having a faulty ecDNA would be becoming a cancer patient very soon. So therefore it also acts as a biomarker. So we have to find out its location, biomarker, and how technologies can be developed to edit them or basically to do the gene editing. So I hope you have very precisely understood what are the two types of DNA and how ecDNA is more deadly as compared to the chromosomal DNA, and therefore why the current existing gene editing techniques who were just targeting this kind of DNA were not effective, particularly in cancer treatment, because they were avoiding the ecDNA. Okay. Now, let's see whether we have answered all the question. We have understood what is DNA, what are the different type of DNA, what is ecDNA, what is its structure, and what are the two important features of extra chromosomal DNA which makes it a cancer multiplier. One is that it has the ability to amplify the number of oncogenes. As I have told you, there are no insulators there. Therefore, without any insulation, what happens is it multiplies the information that is trapped inside this DNA. Let's say the information is of cancer, it will start multiplying, it will start building a lot of cancer cells. Second is, it has also got the ability of rapid evolution, which means if you are giving it a medicine to counter a particular type of cancer, it will remain effective only for some amount of time, because soon these DNAs will evolve itself. So the evolution is also much rapid and accelerated in these type of DNAs as compared to the chromosomal DNAs. Now, once we've understood what is the importance of understanding DNAs in cancer treatment, let's try to answer what is cancer. So cancer is a deadly disease which leads to unsurmountable, or which leads to overwhelming multiplication of the cancerous cells in the body, so much so that the immunity inside our body is not able to kill them effectively, leading to creation of certain cells which consume the entire vitality of the body, and therefore eventually leading to death in many cases. But of course, cancer is a treatable disease. Now, do you know that around 11.2 lakhs new cancer cases were detected in India? Not only that, the most, among male and female who are more prone to getting cancers, so male are more prone to getting cancer as compared to female. In females, although you can see the most common cancers as cervical cancers and breast cancer, leading cause of female death, and for male, most common male cancer is the head, neck and the lung cancer. You can see the rising amount of cancer cases per year, and so much so that there was a 100% increase from 2000 to 2014. Again, in India, more than 5,000 people die every day due to cancer. There are viral infections like HPV and EBV which can cause several cancers. Few of the cancer occur in family due to genetic reason. Some of them could be because of dietary reason, environmental reason, etc. What are the reasons for this? Poor genital hygiene, unprotected physical relationships with multiple partners. This can cause cervical cancer, and of course having cigarettes, which can cause tobacco, which can cause oral cancer, of course consuming tobacco, etc. So what are the implications if you understand all these things that I have told you, learning about the location of ecDNA, whether they can be biomarker or not, and developing therapies for the same? What are the implications of ecDNA and researching on them? First of all, we will be able to build precision medicine which is targeting at the chromosomal level to eliminate this particular disease. This will help us to also get away with the genetic fallouts of developing cancer. Next is drug resistance can also be cured, because if you take drugs, it is highly likely that it will become ineffective. But if you take drugs in the form of drugs which are targeting ecDNA, it will become very easy to cure this particular disease very precisely. Then it can also act as biomarkers, because if scientists could find out large number of ecDNAs in one particular body and could see that ecDNAs are also carrying the cancerous or the oncogenes, then in that case, that will become an effective biomarker to understand whether the generation would be having cancer or not. Next is, it can also help us to develop potential therapies which will be targeting or editing these ecDNAs. This is how it will help us in revamping, boosting and accelerating our cancer treatment. Next, So now students, our next topic is about a very interesting futuristic commutation technology, and this is Hyperloop. So what is Hyperloop? As the name suggests, it is a commutation technology which is operating at hyper speed. And this is of course a futuristic technology because it is not yet operational, but a lot of countries including India have been trying their best to be a pioneer in developing this technology. And why this was a news in the month of December was because IIT Madras has recently successfully operated a test track for Hyperloop. Now the Hyperloop, yes, it is getting tested and constructed in India across two important lines. So one is the Mumbai-Pune line. Here we are trying to build it, and the second one is Bangalore and Chennai line. Of course, supporting partners are IIT Bombay and Madras. Now talking about Hyperloop, as you can see that there is a loop which kind of floats inside a tube. Therefore, it is known as Hyperloop, and this is a high-speed transportation technology with very high degrees of efficiency. Efficiency primarily showcasing in two areas. One is efficiency in speed, efficiency in energy consumption, because it could also run with the help of renewable sources like solar cells. It could get speed up to 1200, reaching 1200 kilometer distance in just 1 hour, which is even higher and better than the aircraft. But what is the working principle behind this very famous technology, which is making it so promising and which is making it highly efficient? Let's have a look. To understand the working principle, you need to put your attention towards this diagram. So what is going to happen? It is going to use two technology. One would be of using vacuum tubes, and the second technology would be of maglev, which also is the magnetic levitation. Levitation means phenomena to float something without having contact with it, right? Now please see this image. How is this particular vehicle, or how this transportation system is going to gain that much amount of hyper speed? So what are the speed inhibitors? First of all, let's talk about that. What are the things which slows down the speed? So speed inhibitors, first of all, is friction. Friction that could be coming from contact. Let's say a railway, a railway pod is there and a railway track is there. Because it is running across the railway track, it will be experiencing certain railway track friction, right? That will slow down the speed. So friction from the sources of contact. And second is the air pressure. Air pressure could also lead to slowing down of the speed. So generally in the ideal condition, we see that if you move anything under vacuum condition, then in that case the friction from air would go zero, and as a result we will be able to achieve very high speeds, hyper speeds. So to remove the air pressure, we use vacuum tubes, which means there will be a pod taxi. I will tell you the size of the pod, but before that, this pod taxi will be encapsulated around a vacuum tube. Vacuum tube, which means that here the pressure is minimized, and at the same time, of course, with the help of oxygen aid, here the entire air would be sucked out. Where? Not from inside this pod, but from inside this vacuum tube, right? So air would be pumped out. So there will be vacuum tube. Now, the second type of friction, which could be coming from the contact sources, could be removed by levitating the machine, which means, let's say this is your railway track. And what if your railway is floating, your rail pod is floating over it without having any contact? And how would something be so powerful to levitate it? If there is no contact, no friction, no resistance, high speed could be observed. But how will something be so powerful to pull it up? That powerful energy comes from enormously high amount of magnetic energy. This magnetic energy will repel it so much so that it will lift it up. For example, have you seen two magnets which are of same poles, north and north? If you bring these two magnets together, they will repel each other completely. So similar principle is used on the basis of magnetic levitation, magnetic technology. There will be two type of magnets. One would be in, so this is a track. One would be in this side, the second would be in this side of the track. Now because there are two magnets, it will create a magnetic field across the track, and because of this strong magnetic field, it will lift the entire pod up, and therefore the contact would be prevented. This is known as magnetic levitation. And because we have worked on these two speed inhibitors, what we have got hyper speeds up to 1200 kilometers per hour, which is even better than the aircrafts. Because if you see how much is the speed of trains, trains have got speed of average 300 kilometer per hour. This is for trains. What about the aircraft? You'll be surprised to know they can only achieve speed up to 900 kilometer per hour. And they are the fastest mode of communication as of now. But this futuristic technology is going to have an enormous speed of 1200 kilometer per hour. To get it into perspective, imagine you are traveling from Delhi to Bangalore, which effectively is about 1000 kilometers. This entire journey would be finished in just 1 hour. Not only that, it is said that the distance between Mumbai to Pune could be traversed in just 25 minutes with the help of Hyperloop. And how this Hyperloop will be structured, how many passenger could it carry? So upon, the current levels of technology says that there will be overall, so it will be containing 6 to 8 passengers per capsule. And how many capsules will be there in one train? There will be only 3 capsules as per the current technology, because only that much weight could be carried. So of course the loading capacity is very less as compared to aircraft, therefore it will not be economical as well. But of course, if somebody, let's say a very high-fi business client, wants to move from one place to another, like Elon Musk himself, who is the propounder of this idea, then they can of course minimize the time with the help of Hyperloop technology. And India could be a pioneer in it, because we are already laying off tracks into very important metro towns, right? Now, let's try to answer some key questions. What is the concept of Hyperloop or hyperlooping? The concept is to minimize the friction or minimize the air friction and the contact friction in the commutation as much as possible. That is done with the help of two principles, which is one, vacuum tube, and second is magnetic levitation. And the origin of this concept was somewhere given in 2013 by Elon Musk, who's also the founder of SpaceX. So SpaceX launched a white paper telling about the technology of Hyperloop, and world is actually taking it very seriously. Some of the futuristic transportation models that you'll be seeing very, very soon. Of course, we have got bullet trains now, but again, we are developing bullet train, but that's an outdated technology. The futuristic transport technology are pod taxis. गुड़गांव में ये शायद establish हो रहा है. Second, we have got this Hyperloop. These two important futuristic technologies we are trying to use. And a question around the same was asked in UPSC prelims PYQ in the year 2023. Next is, what is the working principle? We have understood about the maglev concept. What is maglev? Magnetic levitation. Because we are creating certain magnetic fields, they are repelling the distance or the interaction between the track and this pod, this vacuum tube. So much so, it is levitating the vacuum tube. Okay, and within this vacuum tube, there will be a pod which will be moving. Okay, this pod will comprise of 3 capsules. Each capsule will be having 5 to 8 passengers. There will be a vacuum pump in the tube, which will be moving out all the air continuously so as to maintain the vacuum temperature, so as to maintain the vacuum condition. And the vacuum is not made inside this, otherwise people will die. So please understand, it is not inside the capsule, it is not inside the pod where the vacuum will be made. It will be inside the vacuum tube. Okay. Now, where in India it is getting developed, we have understood. And where in world are they getting developed? So of course, in USA, because they have been pioneer. So in Nevada it is getting developed. Then between New York City to Washington DC it is getting developed. Not only there in the Western world as well, not only there in the Arabic world also, where a lot of money is there, it is getting developed. For example, between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Then of course in India, between Bangalore, Chennai, Mumbai and Pune. Okay, so I hope you've understood pretty much everything about Hyperloop technology. This is everything that you needed to know about this technology from prelims point of view. Now let's evaluate its advantages and disadvantages from the mains point of view. So first of all, the main advantage is its increased efficiency, and the efficiency students is getting increased because of the principles that we have talked about. So it enormously increases the speed as compared to the existing mode of transport, even higher than the aircrafts. That should be very clear because the statement could be asked. Next is efficiency in time. If speed is high, a lot of time could be saved, and I have already told an example of this. How much time will it take to travel from Mumbai to Pune? Just 25 minutes in this hyperloop. Next is the energy efficiency. So far, most of the commutation models are requiring electricity that are generally generated from thermal sources or from sources which are not very environmental friendly. But this in particular does not require a lot of energy, and because it does not require a lot of energy, it can also operate with the help of solar and wind power. So it is also energy efficient. The operation also does not require that much energy, that much electricity intensity as compared to the other modes of transport. Next is it reduces the land usages because it can be built over an elevated platform. Next is it can also remove the problem of congestion, especially which is a problem in the urban areas and the urban towns. Next is it will also require less maintenance. Why? Because most of the maintenance is required to overcome the machinery wear and tear. Wear and tear happens because of friction, because of contact. But if you remove the scope of contact, then what will happen? There will be no friction, no wear and tear, no maintenance required. So yes, maintenance definitely will not be eliminated, but it will go drastically down as compared to the existing mode of commutations. Next, what are the disadvantages? Because every emerging technology has got both the things, and we should be assessing both of them before reaching any point of viability. So first is the high initial cost. Emerging technology which incorporates such a strong magnetic levitation requires very high-ended technical minds, requires high-ended machineries as well, and there is no scope of error as well, otherwise it will cause a lot of fatalities. So initial installation cost would be very high. We will also be struggling across assessing the scalability. Scalability means that whether this hyperloop can actually be installed in all the important areas. For example, it can get installed in Mumbai, but what about cities like Delhi, which is already overcrowded, overcongested? We do not even have a separate track for buses right now, as we can see in a lot of other cities like Bhopal, but in Delhi we don't have that. Not that much space is there. So the geographical conditions, geographical problems, for example, there is a mountain in between, then in that case you cannot create hyperloop commutation between there. So scalability, how much of it can be used in most of the cities, that is also a doubt. Next are the safety concerns. Safety concerns because we are operating this in a vacuum tube. They are levitating as well. So there is no scope of error. If at all any scope or if at all any error occurs, then it will lead to main safety issues. Next is the regulatory hurdle. So whenever a new technology comes in, it often sees a lot of regulatory hurdles in terms of proper funding, proper installation, proper maintenance, and of course, approval in the first hand. That could be the problem with Hyperloop as well. So if you are not using Hyperloop as much, then this will lower down the scalability, this will lower down the profit for the agencies which are creating these Hyperloops, and therefore will also make it obsolete from the market, right? So these are the disadvantages and advantages of this new technology. Now let's move to the next topic. So students, what can you see here in the screen? This is inevitably a chip. But it is not your normal chip, not your ordinary processor chip. This is a breakthrough chip recently created by Google, which is known as a quantum chip. And the trade name that they have given to this chip is known as Willow. This is a Willow chip, and I will explain to you on what principles is it going to revolutionize the computer technology. First of all, is this the first time a company is creating a quantum chip? No. IBM has already created a quantum chip previously, and therefore some of the finest supercomputers or the quantum computers have been created by IBM. But now the internet master, the computer master, Google has also set itself to do the same by creating a quantum chip. But ma'am, why are we creating quantum chips? Because we are stewardship towards a new type of technology, which is quantum technology, and we have already read a lot about it. But of course, I will be very quickly frisking about it and telling you about all the important topics of quantum as well. But see, if I want to create a computer, the very brain of the computer is stored in its processor, in its chip basically. If I want to create therefore the quantum computer and make it available for almost all the normal household computers, I would like to create a chip again which would be having quantum principles, which would be running on quantum principles. Therefore, this will help us to make quantum technology very, very popular, famous and accessible across many different areas and households. Now, whether it will be viable, whether it will be scalable to, you know, uh, install these quantum computers at household levels, that is of course of huge debate because we have not completely developed this technology. But yes, the lab of Google has created one such chip so that it can use it in its operational maneuvers. Now, let us first figure out the key questions and are we able to answer it. So, it has been developed by whom? It has been developed by Google. Second, it is a quantum chip. So, what is a quantum chip? Quantum chip is basically a type of computer chip which uses the principles of quantum mechanics. Now, we all know how quantum mechanics is different from the conventional mechanics. So, it is different from conventional mechanics because right now the mechanics thinks of especially the computational mechanics that we have right now could only read bits 0, 1, etc. And we have got quad core, octa core processors, etc. But in the sense of quantum technology, it operates in qubits. The basic unit is qubit. What I mean by that, these computers can read 1, sure, 0, and also a state where 1 and 0 can exist together. To imagine it in a better way, think of a coin which you have just twisted. So how will it be appearing to you? Neither the head or the tail, but actually you will be able to see head and tail both at the same time. That is how the quantum technology or the qubits are also made. And therefore, if I can create so many computational methods, or I can create so many computational calculations just with the help of 0 and 1, so much so that we have created supercomputer, then just imagine if we give them another variable, then how much accurate, how much speed and how much reliability can be increased with the help of quantum technology. So therefore, it is trying to leverage quantum mechanics, which is the science of very tiny particles like atoms. This is how the atoms also behave, right? Now, the next question that we need to answer is what are these principles involved? So, there are three main principles involved around quantum physics. One is the principle of superposition. How to explain you that? I've just given you an example of spinning coin, right? The way you cannot see exactly whether it is a head or a tail, but you can see both the heads and tails at the same time together. This very principle where the two states can exist simultaneously at the same time is known as the principle of superposition, which means the state of one element is superimposed on another element. So, you can see both of them together as well. This is the principle of superposition. Next is entanglement, which means that two things are somewhere closely binded with each other, which means, let's say, we have a dice which is entangled with dice 2. Let's say the name of this dice is apple. Name of another dice is mango. Let's say I have placed mango in some country of Asia. I have placed apple in some country of America. Even if they are far away from each other, still if they are quantum entangled, this would mean that the moment I will shuffle it and get a 6 in this dice, I will get similar 6 number in the dice of mango as well. Are you getting this? This is how both of them are contacting with each other without being physically closed or coded with each other. And this is the principle of entanglement, my dear students. Next is the principle of quantum interference. What is the principle of interference? Let's say you throw a pebble in a water body. You throw another pebble very close to this particular pebble in the same water body. What you will see that both the ripples, this will be ripple of pebble 1, this will be the ripple of pebble 2. You can see at some point in time both these waves will interfere with each other, and this is known as quantum interference, where the wave or the result or the output of element 1 and the output of element 2 will somewhere create interference, creating more number of outputs. Interference means if two waves are interfering with each other, the output could either be amplified, or if these waves are destructive, then in that case the output would be nullified or would be a suppressor. But what I am getting from these two outputs, I am getting 2 more outputs. So this increases the number and the amount and the calculations and the computations. And therefore, as a result, what I see is that my computational capacity will increase drastically. Next is, what is transmon qubits? Now this question could come that transmon recently seen in news, what is it related to? You just have to pick up that these qubits are specifically related to the quantum chips, not the entire quantum mechanics. If a qubit is being used only for computational purposes, for creating quantum computers, specifically creating chips, then for creating quantum chips, what we require is transmon qubits. Okay. Now students, the next thing is, why are quantum chips more significant nowadays as compared to the conventional chips, the conventional processor? Is because of the advantages. Let us see the key advantages. One is the principle of parallelism, which means, let's say, I want to calculate the weather comparison of 500 cities at a time, and at the same time I would like to understand the air quality of the similar 500 cities. I want to estimate this also at the same time. My computer needs to be very, very powerful, because now it has to process a lot of data, that too in a very short amount of time, and that too parallelly, right? So this is the system of parallelism. Imagine that let's say you are using Google, not imagine, all of you are already using Google. So the way we create multiple tabs after tabs after tabs and we forget to close them also, this is how we are doing parallelism or parallel working. But this of course will not just be limiting itself to creating multiple tabs, but to creating multiple computations which are getting fed with a lot of data. Okay. Now next is complex problem solving. Next is improved efficiency, and next is data security. Because the cryptography, especially the quantum cryptography, has become unbeatable, because it is very difficult to decrypt such data, because currently we do not have that much advanced methodologies which is available with all the government agencies, with all the softwares that we have in the world. And so therefore quantum encryption has become one of the most safest mode of communication. All right. Now talking about the next topic. Next topic is about the environmental consequences of the space activity. Now this has been in news because of a growing dilemma conundrum, and this is that though we are heavily reliant on the satellites for climatic monitoring, somewhere down the line, these space satellites, these climate monitoring satellites themselves are causing certain harm to the climate, certain harm to the environment. So what we are doing, we are overlooking the environmental implications of growing the space debris. Now what is the space debris? Let us understand. So what if a lot of countries decide one day that each of them should be having one communication satellite in the space? right? Of course, everybody is doing this. There is a growing space frenzy, and the situation is such that now we have got more than 10,000 satellites with 36,000 pieces of debris. And not only that, the SpaceX Starlink alone, Elon Musk Starlink alone, is going to install more than 42,000 satellites in the space. Think about the growing debris in the space. And because, of course, if something is growing in unsustainable amount, it will be having certain implication. But what we are ignoring is that it essentially has a lot of environmental implications. And that is something we are going to look over here. Talking about what is space debris again, space debris is when a lot of countries, when they decide to launch up their satellites, it is not just the satellite, the active satellite, which is getting launched, but the launchers which are getting spent in the space, they are somewhere stuck in the Earth's orbit. So either those or the defunct satellites or the unspent launching parts, or let's say some collision happened, so the two satellites broke off, they became defunct, and now their debris, so whatever is not active in the space and still taking the space of our orbit, the geostationary, low Earth orbit, etc., all of them are categorized as space debris because they are of no good use. But at the same time, what they are developing is the Kessler syndrome. Now, what is Kessler syndrome and the other statistics? We'll be looking on it. But first, let's analyze this chart. So, talking about the growing problem of space debris, let us see how many space debris are getting collected. In low Earth orbit, in the form of space debris, in the form of particles which are less than 10 centimeter, we have got about 5 lakh objects. Under 1 centimeter, we have got 10 million objects. 10 centimeter and larger, we have got 20,000 objects. So see the size and the scale of the space debris. It is not just that there are heavy objects only, but there are objects which are as small as 1 centimeter. They are also roaming. Next is the problem of tracking and the problem of speed. So not only are these debris problematic because there are so much in number, but first of all, their trackability is also very difficult because of variation in sizes. So for example, in the geostationary orbit, where you can see deployment of a lot of geostationary satellites and therefore a lot of debris is also there, becomes very difficult to track it. It almost becomes untrackable in this orbit, which means there would be a lot of cascading happening, which is not even amounted here, not even calculated over here. What we have calculated so far is only the vision of low Earth orbit. Next problem is the problem of speed. Imagine a little drop of water. If it is sprinkled at a very, very high speed, jet high speed, what will happen? It will still cut you through. That is the power of speed, because speed instills energy. So no matter how tiny this debris is, let alone if it is larger, it will be having graver consequences. But let's say it is a very small debris of just 1 centimeter, but moving at a very, very high speed, because what happens? In the orbits, they are supposed to move at very high speed. And therefore, orbiting debris moving over 28,000 kilometers per hour, which by the way is 23 times the speed of sound. Imagine the speed with which it is circulating. And now we will look into the environmental consequences which are caused by these space activities. Talking about the consequences, by the way, the main consequences is the creation of Kessler syndrome. This is what the astrophysicists, scientists and the government all over the place are worrying about. Kessler syndrome is when a lot of debris have accumulated in the space. As their number increases, definitely they will be colliding with each other. As they will be colliding with each other, they will be breaking each other as well. This will not only harm an important active satellite, but it will also make it defunct, create a debris out of this as well. As the number of particles which have been converted into debris increases, I will see a cascading impact of debris creation, which means this orbit, essentially the low Earth orbit, will no more be fit for being used for satellites, right? So what are we doing? We are again causing space pollution. because we humans are capable of causing pollution in any way, be it land pollution, air pollution, water pollution, but now noise pollution, light pollution, and now space pollution. Anything which has exceeded the amount of the amounts which are desirable and sustainable becomes a pollution in itself, right? So here we can see space pollution getting created. This cascading effect is known as the Kessler syndrome. This is one impact. Now, of course, when you make a launch, you could see a lot of fumes getting accumulated by the launcher, which is carrying the satellite. These fumes essentially is having hydrazine fuel. Hydrazine fuel has a lot of nitric oxides, NOx. At the same time, whenever fuel combustion happens, what gets released? Carbon dioxide along with methane gas. Both of them are very potential greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases means that when they are trying to traverse to the upper atmosphere, what they are doing? They are doing unnecessary warming of the upper atmosphere while they are moving up. Why? Because of carbon dioxide and methane. Now, when they move from troposphere to the stratosphere, then what they will do? They will try to harm the ozone layer as well, because they contain certain chlorides as well. They contain certain CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, and NOx, nitrous oxides. And as a result of this, they can also harm the ozone layer. So not only are they causing warming in the troposphere, but also in the stratosphere. Now, they are moving towards ionosphere. Ionosphere is responsible for radiating back any kind of radiation back to the earth, and therefore it makes communication possible in earth, right? It reflects back any incoming radiation down to the earth. Talking about the radiation, how it again harms is that there will be a lot of radiations. Now there will be a lot of radiation. As the number of satellite increases, there will be a lot of radiations. Now, when our telescopes, which are installed inside the earth, when they'll be trying to find out any cosmic mysteries, what they will be interfered by? They'll be interfered by these radiations produced by the satellites. So they are also causing radiation pollution. And let's read on what else is there. So we have read about rocket emission, ozone depletion. It can also cause ground pollution because the unspent stages will be thrown back to the earth. So when they reach the water body or the ground, of course, they are not something which are very easily exhaustible, or they are not something which can be decomposed very easily. Unlike some of the satellites which are more sustainable now, for example, in the previous recitals, we have read about LignoSat, world's first wooden satellite to combat the issue of space debris that was created by Japanese Space Agency. But nevertheless, most of the satellites right now are not having material which can be easily decomposed. Therefore, when they'll be dropping off back into the earth in the form of in water or in ground or in land, they'll be causing their own share of water and ground pollution. And of course, there will be impact on radio astronomy. I've already told you the reason, but let's read on it. It will interfere with the signals collected by the radio telescope. So therefore, the imagery of the space, the discovery of the new space objects, etc. would become more difficult because it will cause radiation pollution. Next is, it can also cause optical interference. Let's say some optical telescope is there in the earth. It is trying to figure out what I can see. But the moment it is trying to observe something, it needs darkness, right? The moment it is trying to observe something, it can see already a lot of radiating satellites, because satellites themselves contain certain material which are very illuminating, and therefore these satellites can cause optical interference. They can also cause the upper atmospheric changes. Why? If they are emitting carbon dioxide, methane, hydrazine, nitrooxide related gases, essentially it is enhancing the temperature, altering the temperature and the wind pattern which gets originated from the upper atmosphere. For example, the jet stream, the Rossby waves. And they also release aluminium particles. Aluminium particles are one of the worst destructors of ozone layer. And they also cause a lot of heating, warming. So we have read on all of it. Okay. Now, moving to the next theme. But before that, Since the problem of space debris is getting the global attention, and therefore could also be appreciated by UPSC in the form of questions, and especially in the mains examination. If you would like to dwell more upon the mains aspect of it, you can go to the October and September editions of Recitals, wherein I have covered all in all of the space debris, what all government initiatives, international initiatives are there, how are they getting created, what are their different challenges, different implications, everything will be sorted over there. So you can watch those lectures, but because prelims is nearing by, so therefore I just told you everything which was important from prelims point of view. Okay, next is about the diamond cooling technology. From this particular month of recital, what we understood is that application of diamonds can also be found pervasive in daily lives. Diamond is thus not just a gemstone, but also a very genius stone which could put itself into a lot of applications. For example, dealing and battling the excessive heat that comes out of gigantic computers. Of course, we are not talking about the micro devices, for example, you're in my MacBook and laptop. We are talking about enormous computers having very high heat capacity, heat generation capacity. And do you know, as the processing increases, because we are trying to mine data now, we are trying to analyze a lot of data now, we are doing big data analytics, all of them requires huge computational capacity which is produced by lot of processes together. Because these processes are getting heated, this not only has environmental consequences, but it also decreases the overall efficiencies of the computers. To enhance that, we need to ensure that this enormous heat out of the processors can be dissipated in a better way, right? So for that, diamonds have come to our rescue surprisingly. Now, why is this in news? Because one of the startups of India, the Akash system, which has created this diamond cooling technology for the AI processors, has entered into a partnership with another very important startup, which is also India's largest sovereign cloud provider. You don't need to remember these facts. This is not important from examination point of view. The application of diamond and the gemstones in our everyday life and how it can influence the fourth generation of industrial revolution, that is important. Let's read about this. It leverages the exceptional thermal conductivity of the diamond. If something is very thermally conductive, it means it can take away the heat from the source very, very quickly. So it can act as a very good sink of heat. Therefore, where you do not require heat, you can easily dissipate or cool it down with the help of attaching them with some very excellent heat rod or heat conductor. One such conductor that we have been using till now was copper. Copper is again an excellent sink, excellent dissipator of the heat, because it has got better thermal conductivity as compared to any other material available. But now we have got another competition, diamond. So you have to learn one property from prelims point of view, that the thermal conductivity of diamond is very high, which means it can capture the heat very, very quickly. It can conduct the heat very, very quickly. But at the same time, you have to remember that it can be used to power high power components like electric vehicles, laser diode, high power transistors, amplifiers, CPU, GPU, etc. And because it is diamond, it is obviously the most resistant material out there. So it can be able to survive even the worst or the most stressed of the environments. For example, you can use it in space, you can use it in deep ocean missions, anywhere wherever the environment could be a stressor, right? So it also has enhanced durability. Now, we have read about diamond cooling technology, and believe me, only this much is important. The example of this can be given in mains, and the application of diamond, that it is the highest thermal conductor, could be asked, right? So you have to take care of only these two things. Moving to the next topic. Next topic is very important. Since last 10 years, we have observed obesity to get doubled up in India. And not just in India, it has got tripled down across many countries. For example, the Western countries, the tech giants, all of them who have got a lot of software developers, most of them have got obese. And therefore, we need to find natural solutions and not Ozempic. We need to find natural solutions to beat obesity, and something that could be a natural fat burner. And our state of Tripura has got something like that. This is a fermented shot of bamboo. Like how we have got curd and apple cider vinegar, Now we have got a better version of it in the form of fermented shots of bamboo which is very readily available, and these shots have been found prevalent in the diet of Tripura. Okay, so this shot is known as miliamyli. So you can be asked in the examination that recently seen in news, miliamyli is related to what? So this is a very effective antioxidant which is also a very effective natural fat burner. It also increases the metabolism and it reduces obesity in the body. If I'm talking about obesity, do you know that the official definition of obesity has recently been changed? According to the Lancet report, what we've been considering obesity as of now is not a complete and clear definition. In fact, it was not even fair. How are we calculating obesity till now? By calculating the body mass index of a person. Body mass index is measurement of the weight of the person in kilograms divided by square of their height. If this number comes out to be greater than 30, then in that case, the person is called as obese. Person is called as obese. But is this a proper definition? Because just imagine, if the person has got this much weight because of high height, and this weight is equally distributed to all the body parts, in this case, this person will not essentially be an obese. Of course, obese, but not a deadly obese. Obesity can be very detrimental to the health. It could be deadly as well, because it could lead to creation of a lot of non-communicable diseases. For example, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and the other symptoms of mental health issues as well. So the doctors now want, and the Lancet report has suggested a new definition, that the obesity should be determined on the basis of the pelvic area, the stomach pelvic area of a person, and if that person has attracted any diseases related to weight or not. Diseases related to weight. This would be the newly taken up definition of obesity. Okay, now talking about the findings of miliamyli. So what it will be helping us with? First, reduce the lipid accumulation. So if our body has a lot of lipid, that is fatty acid accumulation, and it has got a lot of tendency for it because of our genetics or because of our dietary practices, because of a sedentary lifestyle, it will be reducing that accumulation. Secondly, it will be a fat burner because it can promote fat burning. How do you burn a fat? Well, fat essentially is a kind of fuel only which body requires. This fuel, upon burning with oxygen, would be releasing something which gives us energy, but at the same time this fuel will get burnt off. Now the only facilitator of this fuel getting converted into energy is the amount of oxygen present. So it increases the fatty acid beta oxidation. Because the oxidation is increased, therefore the breakdown of the fuel, breakdown of the fat becomes very quick. And therefore this becomes a natural solution, which is very important, because the artificial solutions, of course, there are there. For instance, Ozempic has become very famous as of now, but we know that what is natural because they'll be having least amount of implications or harmful side effects, right? So this can turn out to be a very important natural fat burner. And now comes the next application of diamond. It can also be used to create a battery. And not because it is highly conductive. Diamonds are not, they are thermally conductive, but they are not electrically conductive. Then how are we creating a battery out of it which requires electric conduction? So this conduction part will be taken care of by a carbon isotope. The topic over here is, what are isotopes? You all must be knowing that if two elements, let's say there are two elements of carbon, both of them are having 6 electrons or both of them are having 6 protons, if they have different weights, and what is the determinant of weight of an of an atom? So of course, weight is equals to number of protons plus number of neutrons. Let's say if number of proton, which I have said is already 6, it is fixed. If it is 6 and the number of neutron is also 6, then it adds up to 12 mass. But if the proton are 6 but the neutrons are 8, then it adds up to number 14. If it adds up to number 14, definitely they are having same protons, but their properties will be little different. In fact, this will be a more stable form of carbon, and this will be a radioactive element. And a radioactive element of the stable element is known as an isotope. It necessarily need not to be radioactive, but of course it is an isotope. Isotope, iso means same, and what are same? The number of protons are same. And what is different? The mass number is different. So now can you tell me what are isotones? And of course, if you know this, you would 100% be knowing what are isobars. So can I expect that answer in the comments? Let us see how many of you can answer that. Moving back to our core topic. How does it power the future? How are diamond batteries so important? So, carbon-14 diamond battery is a revolutionary technology that harnesses the radioactive property of this isotope. So, what it relies on? The radioactive decay. As the radioactivity is happening, electrons will be getting released to an infinite amount. Why I am saying infinite? Not in the ideal condition, but for me, if something is having a half-life of 5,000 years, it seems to me as if it will never stop releasing electrons, right? So, because it is having half-life of 5,700 years, therefore, it can give me enormous amount or supply of electron that can generate continuous electricity. Intermittency in the energy sources, electricity resources, for example, the solar power plant, etc., is one of the problems. In the day, you get the power, in the night, bloop. So, therefore, this one would be very important to create something which is not just carbon neutral, but at the same time, it is more efficient and it is more long lasting. I hope you are able to appreciate these facts, and therefore what we are using, carbon-14. Then what is the need of diamond encapsulation? So it is encapsulated within the diamond structure because something needs to control this radioactivity. This radioactivity could be very hazardous as well. So therefore, to contain it, to ensure that these electrons are not penetrating outside of this diamond, we require it to be encapsulated inside the diamond, which can hold off this much high energy, because of course isotope would be creating a lot of thermal heat as well. So that will be taken care of by a diamond shell. Now this also is a solution to the generating the rising nuclear waste, because this carbon-14 isotope, it will be extracted from the graphite blocks in the nuclear reactors that have become defunct. So they will be derived from the graphite blocks. What are graphite blocks used for? They are the neutron moderators. And when we are encapsulating it inside the diamond, I am also ensuring that not just its efficiency is increased, but also ensuring that its safety enhances, because it prevents radiation leakage and enhances the durability. So this was about carbon-14 diamond battery, and I hope you were able to understand it. Now, because it is a futuristic technology, we should obviously be talking about its application as well. One limitation of it would be the scalability and the size. The size would obviously be small, but this is not a limitation. This is a blessing in disguise. Why? Because now it can be applied in spacecraft, satellite, rovers where maintenance is not feasible. They can be used in extreme environments. They can be used in very, very small devices which requires deeper and finer penetrations. And they can also be used in deep spaced probe, because first of all, they do not require a lot of maintenance, and secondly, once operational, first of all, the radiation is taken care of, and once operational, they can withstand almost all the stresses because they are operating inside a diamond, and the durability is the main property of diamond. Okay, next. Now the next topic is about the expansion of universe, and I believe this has been the most interesting topic of the month of December. I'll tell you how. we know from geography that there have been various theories, the classical models and the modern theories, telling us how and why our universe is existing in the space it is existing right now. Some of the classical theories were like the nebular classification, the Chamberlain-Moulton model, and the Laplace theory, Laplace hypothesis. So all of them fail to explain something which only Edwin Hubble explained in the Big Bang theory, which is the expansion of universe. Big Bang theory, which happened 13.7 billion years ago. It explained to us that an enormous explosion happened in a very small particle which is very, very dense to the extent that the density, the mass was zero, but the volume was zero, but the mass was infinite. And as a result, you get infinite density. Now, when that infinite density laden molecule, when it explodes, it unraveled the entire universe in front of us. And because it exploded, definitely, release of certain energy must have happened. This energy is continuously expanding the universe that we are sitting in right now. Even if it doesn't seem so, but there are certain evidences which showcases that universe is actually expanding. Some of them, can we name them? So, one evidence is the redshift evidence. So, Hubble telescopes, etc., have observed that when you see a particular galaxy, after some amount of time, you can see it brightening up in red color. And the reason for this crimson color is that it is having longer wavelengths. Why? Because it is moving away from us, away from our galaxy. Because they have this crimson hue, because they have this red color, and therefore they are showcasing the drifting away phenomena or the expansion of the universe phenomena. So this is the one and the most accepted theory, most accepted evidence, not theory. So we know that our universe has been expanding ever since. But at what rate? If everything is expanding, we scientists, astronomers would be trying to decipher some constant, some speed at which we can predict that it is expanding. So it was done by Hubble only. So Hubble gave a constant and he said that these galaxies are expanding at the rate of 70 kilometers per second per parsec. What is a parsec? It is distance between two astronomical objects, specifically two galaxies, and it is about 3 times that of 1 light year. So this one is not just parsec, but it is megaparsec. Edwin Hubble said that there is a constant rate at which universe is expanding. Now I will tell you the news and the context of this news. The Hubble telescope and the related scientists have recently revealed that universe is expanding at a rate much quicker, much faster as compared to the Hubble constant. So it is expanding at a faster rate is something that we have deciphered now. And this deviation, of course there is a deviation. We are seeing that it is probably 72 kilometers per second per megaparsec. This is evidential. This is evidential from the telescope, especially the most powerful James Webb telescope, the Hubble telescope. But the Hubble has already calculated, and the related scientists on this theory have calculated the constant to be 70 kilometers, and this is theoretical value. So of course there is a deviation. There is a deviation between the theoretical and the evidential values, and this difference, my dear students, is known as Hubble tension. Now this is a very important key term which could be asked in your prelims examination. That what do you mean by Hubble tension? Of course, with basic brain cells, you will be able to decipher that this is something related to universe, because Hubble has got everything to do with universe. But you should be very clear on what is Hubble tension. This is the deviation observed between the theoretical expansion rate of the universe and the evidential expansion rate of the universe. And I'm not saying that this is 72. It has not been exposed to a very accurate number right now, but we know that this is faster. This is more as compared to the Hubble constant. Alright. let's quickly revise all that was given in our Recitals magazine. So it talked about the Hubble's law. Hubble's law is that the velocity of a galaxy moving away is proportional to its distance from Earth. So Hubble's law, Hubble's constant, has been created with a reference. The reference was Earth, position of Earth. Next, the value of Hubble constant is said to be currently estimated to 70 kilometers per second per megaparsec, which we have already read. But there have been persistent differences between the value of Hubble constant measured directly and the value predicted from the Big Bang afterglow, which means the Hubble constant. This is known as the Hubble tension we have just read. We were also talking about the evidences which could tell us that universe is in fact expanding. One of those was the redshift happening, and the second one is cosmic microwave background radiations. There have been certain microwave radiations which have been found floating across the universe, which have originated from the Big Bang. So these are the remnant radiations. These are the remnant radiations from the Big Bang. This also supports the fact that Big Bang explosion has happened, and ever since then the universe has been expanding. The rate of universe expansion is faster and roughly of about 8%. That would be expected to be based on what astrophysicists know as the initial conditions in the cosmos. So in the initial condition, let's say it was 70, and now it will be 8% more than that. So roughly 75, right? Now let's talk about biotechnology and how we humans are experimenting around to the extent that now we are creating exact bacteria, something which is just like bacteria. We are mirroring the bacteria, and this is something that has been contextualized in December current affair, because scientists have told us, scientists have revealed and have highlighted the fact that we are in line of creating a lot of mirror bacteria, which of course has its own application but could be having heavy implications in the overall health and the overall biodiversity of the world. So they have alerted us for the same. Here we are going to read about the mirror bacteria and what are they. So in my lab, of course, this is a part of synthetic biology. It is a part of synthetic biology. It is one of the applications of biotechnology, wherein I will take one reference bacteria and I will try to create a replica of the same with a different or an opposite chirality. Chirality means that though it will have exact composition and it will look also the same as that of this bacteria, it will not be able to multiply itself on its own. Because of course, if I am able to create something which could multiply on its own just like the natural bacteria, I am actually competing with God. I am actually competing with the creator of everything, right? And not only that, it will have utter implications, so much so it will not be allowed to do, right? So it will have opposite chirality, which means they have got everything in them as compared to just like the original bacteria. But what they do not have is that they will not be able to interact with life. They will not be able to interact with life. This is a very important fact. Please remember this one. Now let's talk about some of the applications of these bacteria. Of course, we can create new medicines. New medicines, for example, mirror image drugs could be created which is specially resistant to degradation, because the normal bacterial drugs could become very resistant, could become very easily degraded, right? This one would be highly resistant to degradation through body enzymes, leading to more effective treatment of various diseases, for example TB. Therefore, this will also this can also beat one bacteria could eat up another bacteria which has become drug resistance. So this will also help us in combating antimicrobial resistance or drug resistance in body. Next application, it can become potential new sources of the food. Curd is created by a lactobacteria, lactobacillus, and now a lot of other fermented food sources can be created with the help of mirror imaged bacteria. Next is environmental remediation could be done with the help of bacteria. Next is there are certain ethical concerns as well. So every time ethical concerns come up as to how it is going to interact and affect the existing life. Mostly it will be related to bioethics. Many say that the coronavirus was also created, it was also a synthetic virus which was created by a particular country. It is not verified as of now, but if we really get the tool of how to create mirror bacteria, it could also be used for bioterrorism. So this is the main ethical concern. It also has a risk of creating synthetic organism with unpredictable ecological impact as well. And because these organisms can also act as a dual use technology, which means it can be used for both civilian purposes and military purposes. Therefore, they can also be weaponized. Okay, so now on that note, let's move to the next topic, which is about the strategy of infrared regulation. Now, if you ask that is this topic important or not, I would rate it on the scale of 0 to 5 as just 1. This is not a very important topic from UPSC point of view per se, but we'll be covering it. Why? Because infrared, UV radiation, visible radiations have been asked by UPSC. So the radiation is one of the basics that one should be reading. We have read it multiple times in various recitals, magazine of science and tech. Not dwelling too much on it, but this is one of the application of the infrared radiation. We all know that there are certain sauna beds which are responsible for providing us heat. Then anything, for example, there are heaters. Then there are certain natural sources, for example, stars, we have our sun, some of the other cosmic entities. So all of them produce something which has the ability of penetrating heat inside the body, and this heat comes in the form of infrared radiation, right? Of course, infrared radiation has got wavelength less than the visible light. So definitely it has got heat more than the visible light. So heat is more. So this is a very good heat source. Now what if somehow I try to learn how to manage the infrared radiation? Let's say the radiation coming from the sun that can be stored, that can be captured, that can be regulated, right? And then they can be harnessed for multiple applications. Basically what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to harness, collect, regulate the amount of heat coming from various sources, be it natural source or synthetic sources, and I can try to use it for some other purpose. For example, in photovoltaic cells, in solar cells, or for some medicinal purposes, for some sauna purposes. So in that case, we are doing infrared regulation. One of the strategy for infrared regulation has been created by using boron nitride. So this strategy says that we'll be creating nanosheets of the scale of 10 to the power minus 9 meters. Two-dimensional nanosheets of what? Of silicon? No. Of a chemical which is boron nitride. So boron nitride has got one application, that it can regulate, control and collect the infrared. And it has the potential for deployment as radiative heat barrier, thermal camouflage and thermal management applications. So for example, I have got a heater at my home. Now it gives me certain watt of energy, certain watt of heat. Now I apply a sheet on it which is comprising of boron nitride. Boron nitride will camouflage the entire same watt of heat on itself. So now I can gift it to a friend and say that you have also received a heater with same heat capacity, right? Though of course it will not be able to regulate its application of on and off, that you have to take care of yourself, but of course this amount of heat can be camouflaged. This can be copy pasted, right, with the help of this application. What are the properties? These will be invisible to the human eye but can be felt as heat. So your friend will not be able to see that sheet as well. Next, it travels. So of course, if you want a blanket which is providing you the same amount of heat as that of the sauna beds, you can apply this boron nitride sheet on the sauna beds. Heat amount would be copy pasted. Now you can wear that blanket and it will not even be visible, right? Next, it travels in straight line with the speed of light in a vacuum, easily absorbed and emitted by matter, especially water and carbon-based material. Now, what are infrared radiation? The main thing that you need to remember is its wavelength. Its wavelength goes from, so our wavelength are from 300 nanometer to 700 nanometer. In this case, the wavelength is from 700 nanometer to 1 millimeter. So here the wavelength is obviously longer than the visible light. I think I have told you in the previous slide that it is shorter than the visible light. So I'm really sorry for that. You need to correct this one, that it has got the wavelength longer than the visible light but shorter than the microwave. So it comes between microwaves and of course your visible light. Okay. Now, what are the sources of infrared? As I've already told you, it is sun, which is the primary source. Even the stars, planet, earth, other celestial objects, they all release infrared. Then artificial would be heat lamps, heaters, electric heaters, industrial processes, the saunas, etc. As I've already told you, nothing new that you have read here, right? So this is about the strategy of how we can regulate, control, camouflage, copy, paste the heat energy or the infrared radiation. And now comes the very, very interesting IRIS project. Can you see what is there in the picture behind me? You can see a network of stars. But these are artificial stars. In fact, these are the satellites, illuminated satellites, which of course are a brainchild of Elon Musk. This is the Starlink project of SpaceX. So in the Starlink project, what they are trying to do, they are trying to cover the entire Earth by deploying a lot of satellites, up to 40,000 satellites in the low Earth orbit. If I am trying to deploy something in geostationary orbit, which is very, very higher from the surface of the Earth, I would require minimum of just 3 satellites to cover the entire Earth. But to reduce the latency, the time delay, to increase the speed of the internet of the communication channels, I will lower down the speed on which the satellite is deployed. So I will take it down from geostationary orbit to the low Earth orbit. But the problem with low Earth orbit is, see, if I'll come very close to the camera, the overall visuals will be limited. You can only see so much so. You can only see a very limited coverage of the screen. But if I go behind, far behind the camera, you will be able to see a larger scope, right? Similar is the case of satellite deployment. If I am deploying a satellite very, very close to Earth's surface, it will only be able to see little bit. Therefore, is the need to deploy n number of satellites, multiple satellites. The number of satellites Elon Musk is trying to deploy is somewhere about 1,000 to 40,000. This is the Starlink project. Now, if there are satellites all across the world, all the data are getting collected by Starlink, which is Elon Musk's brainchild and who is also supporting the current US government, it has got severe security concerns, sovereignty concerns. And especially this was seen being exploited in the Russia-Ukraine war. Because most of the data that we got, most of the communication that was being done was done by the US-based satellites. This was a concern mainly raised by Europe. Europe, which itself is very advanced in satellite communication, felt that we cannot give all the power to watch over the world just to the US-based Starlink and its enormous project. So, to have a competition, a healthy competition against Starlink, it will be creating an alter ego project by the name of IRIS with the same objective. There are only a little differentiation which I'll be telling you. So, first of all, what is the agenda over here? Agenda is to counter the dominance of private players like SpaceX and national programs like China's BDOS and US GPS by creating UK's own indigenized surveillance network or communication channel. Now, compared to Starlink, which has already deployed over 7,000 satellites in low Earth orbit, European Space Agency will be having an IRIS internet satellite service covering only Europe. And because it only needs to cover Europe right now, therefore, definitely would be deploying lesser number of satellites. About 300 satellites will be deployed. So the key difference over here is, while the Starlink is trying to measure and map the entire world, IRIS would be overviewing only the European continent. Now it is developed in partnership with a startup, SpaceRise, which is an alliance of leading European satellite operators. It will consist of, as I have told you, about 300 shorter satellites. And unique thing is, it will be deployed not just in the low Earth orbit, unlike Starlink project, it will be deployed in multiple orbits, in low Earth orbit, in medium Earth orbit as well, to ensure comprehensive surveillance at different zoom levels, at different levels of orbits, right? Now, in a good news, from the month of December, India has become the fourth nation in the world after US, Russia and China to perform the in-docking experimentation in the space. What is this docking experiment and what are the significances? Docking essentially means that I'm taking satellite or I'm taking some material from the Earth and docking it to a satellite which is already deployed in some orbit. Or why just satellite? I am trying to dock it to some space station or maybe some debris on board. This requires a lot of precision, therefore this technology, if we have acquired, will make us a powerhouse in space tech. So this mission that was launched by ISRO is named as SpaceX because this is a space docking experiment. From prelims point of view, what is required in the SpaceX learning? First of all, this is India's first docking experiment. Where are we going to dock this? So we are going to dock first of all 2 satellites. There are going to be 2 satellites which will be launched from Earth and they will be docked upon the fourth unspent stage of PSLV. The PSLV, which was a part of POEM program. Now this POEM 4 stands for PSLV Orbital Experimentation Module. And this was an endeavor by the ISRO to enhance the sustainability of its program by reducing the space debris. What essentially happens in PSLV rocket launchers is that it has got 4 stages. 4 stages of alternate liquid and solid stage. The fourth stage, however, can be used back because this is an unspent stage. So when it is coming, either we can drop it off into the earth and create ground pollution and atmospheric pollution, or we can keep it on board there. So when it is on board there, either it will be creating a space debris or we need to shoot it so that it can come back to earth. The best way would be to recycle and reuse it as a platform. So the fourth stage of the PSLV would be used for onboarding these 2 satellites. What are the names of these 2 satellites? One is SDX, SpaceX-01, SpaceX-02, and what are their names? Targeter and Chaser. Targeter and Chasers. Now this can be asked that these 2 things have been in use. What are they? So these are the docking satellites that India or ISRO has built. So where are we trying to deploy these satellites? We are trying to deploy them on the 4th unspent stage of PSLV. PSLV, which was a part of POEM program. We'll be reading about POEM program in the next slide. But this POEM PSLV rocket was a kind of space debris which was situated in the low Earth orbit. Low Earth orbit, which was about 470 kilometers from the surface of the Earth. So these two satellites having average weight of about 220 kgs each will be lifted up by a PSLV rocket launcher and they will be docked upon very precisely onto the 4th stage of POEM program or the 4th stage of PSLV rocket. I hope this is clear to you. So now let's talk about the POEM program. So POEM program stands for PSLV Orbital Experimental Module. PSLV, which is considered to be the workhorse of ISRO because most of the rocket experimentations, satellite launching have been performed by PSLV only, so much so it has become our undefeated commercial workhorse, which has launched more than 100 satellites in the space, not just of India but of the other countries who have delegated the work to us. Now, because we were using PSLV a lot, we wanted to try something out. PSLV was also creating debris in the space because the fourth stage of the PSLV used to get stuck in the low Earth orbit. Now, can it be used, can it be reutilized, reused for some other purpose? For that, we needed to understand whether this orbital module could be of some other use. So first and foremost, in the poem program, the fourth stage was docked with certain experimental modules already. So now, as the fourth stage is revolving around the low Earth orbit, now it will be carrying these experimentation modules so that ISRO can have a surveillance for about 5 to 6 months. Okay. So now we can calculate the temperature, the pressure condition, have an overview with the help of these experimental modules. And essentially what all they are trying to do is enhance the sustainability, enhance the reusability, and of course to deal with the main problem of space debris. I don't think this was a very difficult thing to understand. I hope you have understood about SPEDEX and poem, both of which are very important themes for this year prelims examination. So please read a little bit of more on it from your side as well. Moving to the last topic of the day, and this is about the Parker Solar Probe. Now, of late, we have been observing that a lot of countries are trying to build their solar missions to study the star of our solar system, Sun, because it has largely been undiscovered, and obviously it has got a lot of secrets which could unravel the functioning of solar system. And not only that, we have generally not read about the different layers of the sun. For example, it has got a photosphere, a corona, it has got a very strong core. How is it created? It has nuclear fusion inside it. Why are these sunspots created? Why are these sunspots creating the solar flares? And at times they also create the coronal mass ejections, which are the electromagnetic, the ionic waves, the plasmic waves that come out of the earth, and they can impact the radiation across the solar system, right? And specifically of the lively planet Earth. To read on that more, a lot of probes have been trying to go as close to Sun as possible. But of course, because of enormous heat, it is practically not possible, no matter how highly sophisticated material you use to design those satellites. Our country is keeping itself at a safe distance by docking its by placing the Aditya L1 mission, India's first solar mission. Aditya L1 mission that India has recently launched. It has been docked in the Lagrange point 1. So it has docked itself in L1. And this is not the closest that we can go to Sun, because there is a frenzy of almost all the countries to go as close to the Sun as possible. It has been the NASA's Parker Solar Probe, which has recently achieved the feat of going the closest to the Sun and then creating the experimentation and observation. This is the news from the month of December. Now, talking about the structure of the Sun, in the internal area, of course, we have a very hot core. But the surprising thing is that the hottest area of the Sun is its outer layer, which is known as corona. And this is not visible. This is not a visible layer. It is a radiative layer. The layer which is visible is known as chromosphere and photosphere. Photosphere, obviously, it becomes less visible. This is the photosphere, which is responsible for emitting out the light that we see. But it is the chromosphere which finally gives Sun its color with the help of sunspots and the different explosions that you see in different color, overall making Sun appear as a yellow-white giant. Okay. But of course, the hottest part is corona. And corona is not visible. Corona is not the visible layer. Please remember, this is the hottest layer around the Sun. This is corona. Let's now talk about the Parker Solar Probe. This was launched, of course, by NASA, which year? 2018. In 2018, now, on this note, I would also like you to remind that you should be reading about certain solar missions. For example, the SOHO mission. Then we have got, of course, Aditya mission and the Parker Solar Probe mission. They have been in news, right? Now, About this mission, it was launched in 2018 by NASA under Living with Star program, and this was to study the sun's outer atmosphere, which was the corona, and in particular look into the coronal heating problem. Why is that corona is much hotter than the sun's surface? Why is the atmosphere more hotter than the surface? Now, also read about what causes the acceleration of the solar wind, which creates solar flares. And you must be knowing that 2024 was the year when we saw good amount of solar flares and coronal mass ejections hitting Earth. And this could disrupt potentially a lot of grid technologies, a lot of communication and radiative technologies, our electricity networks. So therefore, we should understand at what frequency these solar winds could potentially come. We can't control, but we can at least predict them and we can be prepared for them. Right? Next, what are the key features of Parker Solar Probe mission? Very, very quickly we learn about it. So this is unprecedented proximity. It has been designed to fly closer to sun as compared to any other spacecraft before. So if this similar statement comes for any other sun mission, solar mission, then that would be wrong. Only solar probe, Parker Solar Probe has gone to an unprecedented closeness with respect to sun. Then it has got a very sophisticated heat shield, which is able to withstand an extreme temperature of over 1300 degrees centigrade, and it has got scientific instruments which can measure sun's plasma, magnetic field, and of course its energetic particles. These instruments are fields, sweep, etc. I don't think that they will be asked anywhere in the examination, not of importance for us. Of course, for the US citizens it is, for their civil services they should be reading, but it is not for us. And on this note, we are done with all the topics required for preparation of science and technology from the month of December. I really hope that you've liked it. Let me know your views on it as well. Thank you so much and have a nice day.